So beautiful to have you all here and to be together. As always, we'll start with one of the questions that comes in from our global family who join us online, on Facebook, on YouTube, on different channels. Our global family who's not physically here with us, but sitting in their homes and their cars and their offices, but connected to us so deeply that they're tuning in and joining us and being with us. So we always do the first question in honor of those who cannot be physically present on the banks of Ganga. And then we'll open it to any questions that anyone here may have. Yeah. Should we concern ourselves more with doing things right or doing the right things? Should we be more concerned with doing things right or doing the right things? Both. Our minds and our brains are infinitely capable. We don't have to choose one or the other. We obviously need to be focused on doing the right things. That's clear. You want to make the right decision. How many of us every day wonder, what's the right decision here? What's the right thing to do there? Right? So frequently we think, what do I do here? What's right? What's not right? So obviously and definitely, we need to do that which is right. However, we also have to do things in the right way. So we do that which is right, that which is honest, good, compassionate, caring. We know this. This is not only from our scriptures, but this is what you learn in kindergarten, right? These are the beautiful lessons that we learn in kindergarten. There was, I think, a great book about that. Wasn't there? Everything I ever wanted to learn, I learned in kindergarten. Right? Share with others. Put things back where you found them. Take care of your stuff. Don't hit. Don't lie. So that's the do the right thing. Meaning, be honest, have integrity, have compassion, have generosity, live in alignment with values. Yes, we all know this. It's not rocket science. But also the other aspect of doing things right, well, that gets a bit more subtle. And this is where in our teachings, if you read the Bhagavad Gita, for example, Lord Krishna teaches about the right speech. Well, tapas of speech, the right speech, is that which is true, but also kind and beneficial. It's not enough to just be 1 out of 3. It has to be all 3. That's right speech. We learn about right livelihood. What's the right way to earn a living? The goal is not just say, say, you can get some money in your pocket. There's dharmic ways of earning a living. There's a right way to have relationship. If you're a husband or a wife, a mother, a father, a son, a daughter, there's a right way to be in relationship. So there's a right way to do pretty much everything we do. So we need to focus on both. We do the right thing, but also whatever we're doing, we do it right. Now, that doesn't mean, by the way, it doesn't mean when we say do the right thing that you're being stuck in a box. I'm not talking based on a societal norm. That's not what I mean by do the right thing. Those of you who come to satsang a lot or watch know that I am not a proponent for blindly following what the neighbors are doing or what people have done for the last decades or hundreds of years, but rather for doing what you know is right. And sometimes it makes the neighbors happy, sometimes it doesn't. But that's okay. Because our highest goal in life is not to make the neighbors happy. So when we say do the right thing, I don't mean, as we would say in Hindi, jo theek lagta hai. Right? I'm not worried about jo theek lagta hai ya theek nahi lagta hai. Wo aapko dekhna hai. That's between you and God. Theek lagta hai usually has to do with what the neighbors are going to say. Right? Doesn't look nice. Well, it doesn't look nice to whom? Who's looking? When I first came to India and I didn't speak Hindi, so they would translate into English and they would say, oh, I can't do that because it doesn't look nice. And I would say, well, look nice to whom? Like, who's looking? Who's paying attention? Who cares? And why do you care? So I'm not saying obviously disregard norms, but when I say do the right thing, I am not speaking about societal norms. Norms need to change. Norms need to evolve. If we go back in, American history, a history I'm much more familiar with than hundreds of years of Indian history or thousands of years. You have a lot longer history than in America we do. But if you go back in American history, well, societal norms not that long ago said that you could have a slave. You could actually own another human being, like a piece of property. Well, clearly that's not right. But at that time, that was the norm of American society. So I'm all in favor of examining and re-examining societal norms. But when I say do the right thing, I mean according to your dharma, your connection with God, your awareness of what is right. My guru Pujya Swamiji always says, we've all got an internal GPS inside that tells us what's right. And so many times when people ask, well, I don't know, is this right or that's right? 9 times out of 10, they do know, but they just want to do the thing that they know isn't right. And so they create this confusion around, I don't know what's right, hoping to be able to justify to themselves doing something that they know isn't right. So we do the right thing, not just because theek lagta hai, but we do the right thing because that is our dharma. That is the way. As Lord Krishna explains in the Gita, that the wise people behave. The yogis behave. They do that which is right. But they also, whatever they are doing, do it in the right way. And what you'll find is, whether it's eating our food, whether it's getting up in the morning, whether it's earning a living, whether it's being in relationship, there's a way to do it. It's not right and wrong as in which fork do you use, right? You go out sometimes to fancy meals, and there's 3, 4, 5 forks and 4 or 5 spoons and a bunch of knives, and each goes with a different course. It's not, when I say the right way, it's not about be sure to use the right fork. It's the way that is in alignment with righteousness. The way that is in alignment with the truths. So what are we supposed to eat? When are we supposed to eat? How much are we supposed to eat? Those are the pieces. Not about the forks or the knives or the napkins or your elbows on the table or not on the table. It's not that. But it's about that which is in alignment with righteousness. Similarly, when we earn a living, what is the right way to earn a livelihood? Well, not the way that steps on people's heads, that cheats, that betrays, that oppresses or suppresses, but in alignment with righteousness. So we do both. Those of you who walked in as I was speaking, this was the first question that had asked, is it more important to do the right thing or to do things right? And if anyone here has a question, I would be happy to answer it. Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Pranam Sadhviji.
Pranam.
Sadhviji, this is a question regarding Seva. And the situation is it God have a list? Like if Seva is happening in some dharmastan, in Rishikesh, Haridwar, or in ashram, then it will be considered to God. Or if Seva is happening in somewhere far in tribal locations with Seva bhav, and God won't be able to see it, what it is like, how Seva should happen.
Beautiful. Seva, or selfless service, is a spiritual practice. We misunderstand Seva sometimes, and we think that Seva is humanitarian work, volunteer work. And from the outside, at a distance, it may look the same. Somebody's feeding people, someone's a doctor performing operations, someone's stuffing envelopes to raise donations, whatever it may be. An infinitely vast array of things that people can do. They may look the same in Seva compared to volunteer work or philanthropy or humanitarian work. From the outside, they can look very, very similar, even identical. But from the inside, they're vastly different. Humanitarian work, volunteer work, is rooted on the person we're serving. Okay? These people are hungry. We need to feed them. Great. Beautiful. These people are sick. We need to treat them. I am the doctor. I will treat them. I am the philanthropist. I will spend the money to feed them. Okay? And that's why philanthropy is beautiful, and volunteer work is beautiful, and humanitarianism is beautiful. Seva, though, is actually a spiritual practice. Seva is about us. The other person we are serving, however we may be serving, is an opportunity for us to purify our mind, our senses, so that we can reach that ultimate state of awakening. Now, yes, the actions are the same actions. Feeding people, helping people, schools and women's centers and medical care and feeding, whatever it may be. From the outside, the activities look the same. But in humanitarianism, there's two. I'm the one doing, you're the one getting done to, right? I'm treating you. I'm the doctor, you're the patient. Or I am the one giving, you're the one receiving. I'm the one with a lot, you're the one with nothing. I'm the giver, you're the receiver. I'm the humanitarian, you are the poor, needy person, I am serving. Division, separation. Still important, still beautiful. Everyone should do volunteer work. Everyone should give something of themselves as much as we can. But Seva is very deep. It's the same actions. But the way that we do it isn't about you're poor, I have a lot, I'm giving you. It's, may I serve you? Because in serving you, I transcend the illusion of separation that makes me think you and I are separate. And if you permit me to serve you, then through this service, I begin to experience that there actually is no place I end and you begin. And then I have a very deep spiritual experience of seeing myself in the other. And so in Seva, we respond to what is needed. In typical volunteerism or humanitarian work, it's here's what we do. Whenever, wherever the need arises for what we do it. In Seva, the question is different. In Seva, the question is, what is in my lap? What has presented itself to me? I do it. Because ultimately it's not about what I do. It's about this experience of humility. Experience of purification of my way of thinking, of my way of living, of acting, of my sight and my mind. And that uplifting experience of realizing I'm serving the self. If my arm itches, I'm going to scratch it. If my stomach growls, I'm going to feed it. If I'm cold, I'm going to put on a sweater. If I feed you, realizing you are me, or I give you medicine or bandages, realizing you are me. I put a sweater on you because your cold is my cold. Then it's Seva. And where to do it? Anywhere. God is not paying, I don't believe, more attention to people in certain places than other places. God is paying attention to everyone all the time. There's no place you can go that God isn't paying attention. So wherever you are, God is watching, God is there, God is with you. It's not even God is watching. God is in you, as you, serving through you. If God weren't in you, you would not be able to do Seva. Doing Seva is connecting to that presence of God and being the vehicle through which service happens. Which is why it's not about me. In terms of my ego self, it's about me in terms of the divine, capital S self, that is this channel for the divine, that is one with the divine. The reason that being in ashrams, being in dharamshalas, being in communities of people is, I mean, there's a lot of reasons, but one of the main reasons is that you're surrounded by people who are also serving. It's like, can I meditate alone? Of course. Can you chant kirtan alone? Of course. Does God love your kirtan just as much alone as if you're sitting in a group? Of course. But there's a very special ras that comes when we pray together and sing together. There's something very powerful that comes when we meditate together. When we serve together. Meditation in action. And so the benefit of being in communities of service, of seva, is that you've got that energy of the place. So that's much more powerful usually than being on your own. It's the same reason people go to the mandir and sing kirtan in groups and go to meditate and pray collectively. There's a power there. It's not about God paying more attention. It's about us being more connected. And we tend to be able to be more connected in community. Sure. Part 2.
So as you mentioned, it's a connection with God. So how to know what's God's will? ब्रह्म की इच्छा को कैसे जाना जाए? कि आप जो parents हमें बोलते हैं, the parents' expectation is God's will because they are like God, and or in the community we are living and the people, they have expectation for me to do. Yes. That's God's will, or something else is guiding us.
Beautiful. Everyone's agenda for you is not necessarily God's will. But this is very, very beautifully subtle because we are definitely told to see our parents as God. And so if they have an agenda, you asked it in a very beautiful way, if they have an agenda and they are God, then isn't their agenda God's will? Well, it depends what place from within them they are sharing that. And the overwhelming majority of the time, what they are sharing is their ego agenda. They're not sharing from the place in them that is God. Because then that place in you that is God would feel it. You would recognize it. You would know it. You wouldn't feel like you're being stuck in a box or buried in the sand. You wouldn't feel suffocated. You'd feel expanded because the divine in you would be connecting to the divine in them, and it would be exuberant and beautiful rather than suffocating and miserable. So what's happening is our parents, who are human beings, divine, beautiful human beings, in their human aspect, have the same thing that all humans have. Ego, fear, anger, desire, frustration. Simply giving birth does not render you no longer human. Simply giving birth does not wipe out your ego, your anger, your fear, your confusion, your neuroses, your issues, your complexes. If it did, then men couldn't be enlightened. Right? I mean, if the actual act of giving birth was the thing that somehow turned ordinary humans into God, then we'd only have enlightened women. Right? And then those of us who have never given birth wouldn't stand a chance? Then no one could ever attain enlightenment after hitting menopause? Right? Better get there fast. Clock is ticking. Right? So it's not that. They give birth, but they're still human. They're just now human and your mother. And in our respect and reverence for them, we understand that humanness in them. And we care for it and we love it. And we love them and we respect them. But we don't bow to their humanness as though we were bowing to their divinity. And that's a subtle but really important distinction. Because remember, you're also God. And imagine you gave birth. And you still have confusion and fear and ego. And if suddenly you were expected to not have any of that just because you've become a mother, right? You think about how old were most of our parents when they had us, right? My mom was 26. Usually when I ask this, the numbers that come out are in the 20s, right? I would imagine some of you, your parents were mothers may have been even in the teens when they had you. So the idea that somehow those beings are enlightened. When we say they are God, yes, the core of who they are is the divine. But that doesn't mean that we bow to their egos or to their confusion or to their fear. I was sharing recently that what I experienced in my life was that when it was so difficult for my parents or so difficult for my mom rather, to let me move to India, what I realized was that, first of all, I knew I had to move to India. I mean, I just knew that was my dharma. There was no way around it. But what I realized on a deeper level was that to not fulfill my dharma just because it was going to make my mother upset was actually a disservice and an insult to her. Because actually what that was saying is, you are so weak. You're so weak that you need me to give up my entire life just to protect you from not having some expectation fulfilled. You need me to give up my life to protect you so you are not frustrated. Whereas having to face our own frustration, having to face our own unfulfilled expectations, is actually the stuff that spiritual progress is made of. The way that my parents have transformed by me being in India is amazing. It wasn't easy, and it wasn't automatic, and it wasn't super fast. There were some difficult months and even some difficult years. Because we all have agendas and expectations and dramas and stories of how we expect things to go. And the minute anything rattles that, from the weather to a natural disaster, to illness, to death, to someone in our family, a loved one doing something that isn't what we want them to do, it throws those expectations right up in our face. And what we all want is, Jo मैं चाहती हूँ वही कर दो, ताकि मेरे को कोई परेशान ना हो. तुम जो कर रहे हो वो मेरे को परेशान हो रहा है उससे, तो जरा इसको मत करो. That's what we hear people tell us. The problem is that really what that's saying is, the reins of my happiness are in your actions. Right? You wear those ripped jeans out. Or mere ko pareshan hote hai. My mother's pareshan or happiness is hooked into the jeans I'm wearing. Right? Itni halki nahi hai. Mothers are much stronger than that. But for us to say, Chalo, I will never wear it again because, oh my God, I don't want to cause you any trouble, is saying, haha, you are very weak. You're very weak. My genes are enough to cause you parishan. Like, really? So, actually allowing them to have the experience of looking at their own agendas, of looking at how their agenda may not necessarily be your dharma, is actually a beautiful spiritual practice for them. They'll fight it tooth and nail, I guarantee you, because it's hard. No one wants to look at that. We all have agendas. What our life is going to be like, what it's going to look like. And when it doesn't happen, we're very, very ready to blame someone. We'll blame God, we'll blame the weather, we'll blame our loved ones, we'll blame our bosses or our employees or whoever it may be. But actually having to look at and just witness and be still and compassionate with our very human selves that are learning the fact that jo main chahti hoon, waise nahi hai ki wahi hoga. Because ultimately what that means is that God is playing favorites. I mean, let's say that I want to become president of the company. But you also want to become president of the company. And he also wants to become president of the company. So that means that if you become president and I get upset, really what I'm saying to God is, you should have been partial to me. You should have done what I want instead of what she wanted. But God's not partial. And in this case, it's like saying that God is partial to someone else's agenda rather than to your dharma. And I don't think so. So you become very clear on what your path is. And then you walk it. But you walk it with compassion for those who it may not be their agenda. With love, with compassion, with gentleness, with tenderness. And you become willing to sit in the presence of your uncomfortableness while they tell you how upset they are about the decision you've made. But you hold that space because you know that following your dharma is what you need to do. But you're not going to run away from them. You're not going to run away from their emotions. You'll care for them as best as you can, with as much love, as much compassion. But as we honor the God in them, we also have to honor the God in us. And we also have to have love and compassion for the God in us, just as we have for the God in them. And when we speak about service and compassion, well, we are also included in that, right? There's nowhere that it says, be in service of the world except your own higher self. Have compassion and love for all except your higher self. We need to have love and compassion for our higher self as well. And sometimes that gives someone else the opportunity to learn that actually they're not weak, they're very strong. And even though what you're doing is not what they want, they're still okay. They won't fall apart. And that's actually a very beautiful lesson for them to learn. So don't deprive anyone of learning that lesson. Beautiful. Yes.
Good evening, Sadhviji. Sorry if this may be disturbing question for any one of us, but I want to ask. We usually say that birth and death, they are usually destined. How about those people who have lost their lives during COVID too, because of hospital carelessness and all?
So, where does the law of karma and destiny come in those who lost their lives due to COVID, due to hospital negligence or bad situations? Is that what you were asking? The law of karma and destiny is just as much there regardless of how we've lost our lives. But remember that karma, it's not about rewards and punishments. It's not about good and bad. Right? So a lot of us, we look at something and we say, oh, this person got something bad, they lost something. They lost their job, they lost their marriage, they lost their health, they lost their life, they lost their loved one. They must have done something bad, and that is why they are getting bad karma. Someone else gained something, success, wealth. We say, oh, they must have done something good, that's why they get good karma. But karma doesn't work like that. It's not about rewards and punishments. It's not about good and bad. It's about us taking the next step on our path closer and closer to the truth of who we are, to the divine. We're going to get whatever situation is most conducive for us to take that step. So if you look at past lives and all of our past karma, karma means action. So the action we've done in the past. You look at that, you bring us to today. You say, okay, so all of that past action and the repercussions that are coming from that, the fruits coming from that, that's where I am right now. In order for me to take my next step, to peel back my next layer, what do I need? Well, for some of us, that next layer is going to peel back in success. For others in failure. For some in wealth. For others in poverty. For some in health. For some in sickness. So remember, the universe is giving us that which we need to peel back our next layer and get closer to God. It's not about rewards and punishments. It's not, oh, you lost your life in COVID due to this, you must have had some bad karma. No. Not at all. That hospital negligence, that virus, was just the madhyam, the medium through which that person left their body. You know, we leave our bodies for a lot of reasons. Not just one. One reason we leave our bodies is we've milked it for all it's worth, right? We're old, we're not so well, we're not so strong, and we need a new one. Like our shoes are worn out or our clothes are worn out. And so finally, even though we loved it and have worn them for decades, we throw out the shoes, we get a new pair. We throw out the jacket, we get a new one. Because we realize it no longer works. It's so thin, full of so many holes. So in the same way, sometimes we leave our bodies just for that reason. We still have a lot of karmic work to do, but it's time for a new body. Sometimes we leave because even though the body is still okay, the particular role we are playing in that body, this particular karmic journey in this body, is over. We've learned what we needed to learn, we've done what we needed to do, and we're done in this particular body, in this role. We'll take another body, we'll have another role, we'll go through the rest of our karma. A lot of times, though, we leave because our karmic work is just done. We don't need to take another body. We don't need to have another role. We're just done. And that's when we speak about moksha, or liberation. And even though to us, in bodies, the idea of longer is better, that's not necessarily the universe's feeling. The universe doesn't have an agenda that you squeeze out as many possible days as you can. The universe's agenda is that you use whatever days you have to wake up. You use whatever hours and days you have to get closer to the divine, to the truth, to your true self, free of the roles, free of the drama, free of the ego, free of the stories. That's what the universe wants of us. And so when we have done that, well, then we no longer need to be here in the body. And so sometimes we leave our bodies just because the work is done.
And then how about those kids who are really very small? I mean, we say that once we have fulfilled our responsibilities, so God allows to leave our body and move on, right? And how would
Can you turn that microphone on for her? So, thanks. Just because then the people not in this room but watching online, it'll go in the camera, they can hear the question.
Okay, so my question is, you usually say that, once we're done with our karmic or karma, so we leave our body, or maybe we get into the state of achieving moksha as well. But what about those kids who are really small, 2 years, 3 years, who haven't seen anything? They hardly knew how does the parent feel like, right? So how about their karmas then?
So a child who's 2 or 3 years, as you say, hasn't seen anything in this life. In this life. There's a reason that children who tend to die, inevitably, whenever you hear about them, whenever family members tell you about them or you read about them, if it's something in the paper, inevitably they are children who were the most divine, the purest, the most beautiful. It's always like that. And I think the reason for that is that these are beings who in their past life, their last life, were almost done. They had really finished everything, except they had just a little bit left. And so they needed to come back just for a few short years, just to work out that little bit of remaining karma, to clear that karmic bank account, and then to be free. And as far as their parents, again, it's not rewards or punishment. So it's not, oh, you were bad, therefore you're going to have a child who will die at a young age. No. But it's through this experience with your child, first parenting such a divine being, and then going through the loss of this being, you will experience a level of, first, of course, pain and despair. Absolute, horrendous, heartbreaking pain and despair. But as you're broken open, out of that brokenness, out of that despair, that which you learn is actually what you are here in this lifetime to learn. That which you experience is actually what you are here in this lifetime to experience. So don't think about it as, oh, they must have done something wrong. No. It's just that experience is that which is going to peel back their layers and get them closer and closer to that truth of themselves, of God, of the universe, which are all, of course, one. And that doesn't mean, by the way, that it isn't horrendously painful. And you know, there are some things in life where understanding the reason doesn't really help, or at least not yet. But that's our mind's way of trying to make sense of things. And sometimes there are moments where it's not about what does it mean. It's not about why. It's just about how. How to be in this moment, in the pain, in the grief, and drop into it without pushing it away, but allow it to change us. Allow ourselves to really be present with it. And in situations like that, don't worry about the why right now. At some point, that aspect may become apparent in different ways. But for a long time, maybe for the rest of this lifetime, it's just about how. How to be present. How to expand the consciousness in such a way that I hold that while I hold the rest of the beautiful life. How to hold that grief and hold the rising sun at the same time. How to hold that grief and hold the fragrance of the flowers at the same time. How to hold that grief and hold the beauty of Ganga, the beautiful stars in the sky at the same time. Only through an expansion of the self, an expansion of our awareness, of our consciousness. So ask how rather than why. Okay? Yeah. Have a beautiful, beautiful rest of your evenings. A beautiful morning and day. to our family joining us from all over the world. And I look so forward to seeing you all tomorrow. So much love.